we're going to have social credit scoring for individuals. And if your social credit score is low enough, or if you've used too much carbon, or you've participated in a big barbecue where they use a lot of beef, it could be the fact that you lose access to your digital currency, and that is a very real situation that's just around the horizon.
You know, when you go to a rock concert, we're getting ready to go to Keith Urban, and I'm excited about that. But this lady right here, Julianne Romanello, she is a rock star to me. How many of you know who she is and or follow her on social media? Well, you're going to get to know her, for all of you that don't have the pleasure of it. She is a mother of 4, and she is an independent scholar. She's a PhD. Her degree was in political philosophy. Let that sink in. She is a deep thinker. I wouldn't want to have anybody else feed me information about the advancement of the global economy but somebody like her. And I'm so excited. She has taught at several colleges, recently at the University of Tulsa. She's from Tulsa. Thank you for driving all the way here. She has been on many international radio and podcasts, and she proudly boasts of being blocked from the World Economic Forum. That's pretty cool. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Julianne Romanello.
It is a pleasure to be here. Let's see if I can get this. Can you hear me well enough? Okay. No, I always hear that I have a soft voice, so let's see if I can get that. And can you hear me in the back? Okay. Okay, let's see if I can do this. All right, well, I would like to thank you all for coming today. It's my pleasure to be here, to see so many faces of fellow Oklahomans who care about the future of our state and the future of our country. And I don't like to be an alarmist, but I do want to say that we are facing very serious times right now. Actually, that's an understatement. So to see so many people who are out, and just a couple of weeks ago in Tulsa, we had 110 people show up to a meeting at the Tulsa 9112 group who are concerned with the same things. I'm very encouraged about what our state as a state can do when we understand the information and we can see the plan for the global economic agenda that's rolling out. So the title of my talk is The New International Economy and the End of Nation States. And it is, when I had a conversation with Joy about speaking here, she said, well, can you think of the top 3 things that we need to be concerned with? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, there's so many things to talk about. The first I would say is the rollout of the 4th Industrial Revolution and the mature surveillance state. The second is the transfer of public authority to private, unaccountable, unelected corporations and task forces. And then the third is the ideological program of communitarianism. That's not communism, it's not capitalism, it's a very sinister merger of both. And that is a crucially important word to know, communitarianism. But because it would take, a day to exhaust all those topics. Actually, it would take a long, long time. Then I've picked just the second of those to talk about today, because this is a political group, and thank God.
This is a political group because we have to get politically active.
And, you know, my first love is teaching. I have not been extensively involved in politics, but I love our Constitution. I love our principles of limited government and freedom of conscience, and, you know, representative government that is accountable to the people. And so I want to talk to you all today as people who are involved in politics about how the new economic order, that's all right, the new economic order is trying to make this activity of politics irrelevant. Okay, so I maybe should have
Titled this talk "The End of Politics."
Nice, you have to get the clicker. Okay, so what we're up against is an economic order that's going to privatize all of our institutions of government, and I hope to, you know, just show you a bit of how they're going to do that today. Okay, so this is sort of my thesis, and I'll just read it to you, and I can send the slides later on so you can go back in depth. But my thesis is that our processes for treating questions of policy and justice, processes that are established in the U.S. Constitution and the Oklahoma State Constitution on the basis of principles of natural law and the spiritual and moral heritage of the Western tradition, and which are expressed in legislation that, you know, goes back to the people
and protected by our courts and judicial system.
Those processes are in the last stages, we are late in the game, of a controlled demolition that is preparing the way for a bipartisan or beyond political or pragmatic or what works or consensus-based or community-engaged model of social management. Okay, I'll use scare quotes to designate buzzwords because as a teacher I really like to give people tools for understanding what's going on. And anytime you see the scare quotes up here, you know you're dealing with a buzzword. These are phrases that have been tested through focus groups and you know, different marketing firms have done studies to figure out what are the best words through which to present this sinister agenda. So you need to learn those and recognize them, I think, if you want to fight this, because whenever you see the buzzwords, you know you're dealing with a New World Order program. Okay, so we're moving from representative politics to social management. You know, it sounds like a fantastical claim to say, well, we're dealing with the end of nation states. You know, the very idea of a country that is governed according to a fixed territory, according to rule of law that's established in, you know, a document that's been ratified by the people and that has a huge bureaucracy and has a long tradition. It sounds nuts to say that we're facing the end of that, right? I mean, it sounds like a fantastical claim, but these are just a handful of headlines that help to show you how we are being primed for the end of nation states. Now, that doesn't mean that the United States is just going to collapse all of a sudden, or that we're not going to have the three branches of government. But what it does mean is that, you know, we're being trained through this kind of propaganda, and that's what it is, to believe that we need a new social compact. And that is another buzz phrase that you'll see. Lest you think that this is, you know, just some fashion that has, you know, happened in the COVID craziness. Let me show you. This is from 1974, the United Nations Declaration on the New International Economic Order. You know, I never knew about any of this stuff until like 2019. I was clueless, and I have a PhD in political science, right? Okay, but I've heard about these things, but you know, we have such faith in our institutions and we have faith in our neighbors and in the Lord that we tend to be very trusting and not dig in deep to the origins of these things and their very powerful tentacles. Okay, so 1974, you see that we have a program of action on the establishment of a new international economic order. And then the picture that's over on the other side is 2012 or 2015. They renew these all the time.
It's another
Resolution from the UN that is affirming the need for a new international economic order. Okay, this is a breakdown of barriers so that, excuse me, so that capital can move freely from one state to another. And really, it's driven by the financial sector, by the corporate sector, and excuse me. Okay, so we've got a long history. I mean, you can go back much longer than this, but just so you know, that is a copy of the document. Okay, we're going to talk specifically about inclusive capitalism, which is the Build Back Better, it's the Great Reset, it is the sharing economy, the circular economy. All of those are phrases that describe the framework for inclusive capitalism. I brought that framework, and it's up here on the table so you can pass it around if you would like to look at it. You can see it's a real document. Really big players have signed on to it, and I just saw that the Biden administration has entered into a public-private partnership to serve minority-owned businesses, to promote those. And all of the partners in that initiative are basically on the board of the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism. Okay, so we're seeing that the framework for inclusive capitalism is being inserted into executive orders, into agreements and partnerships with the bankers, with the corporations, with, foreign governments even, that are really trying to wreck our system because they have a new model of
profiteering
that is based on impact investing, and that is making money off of social engineering programs. Okay, so the new international economy and the end of nation states. Nation states, this is not unique to the United States, but we are probably the most, we're the most difficult to take down, okay, because in general, most of us believe in the rule of law. We believe in the Bill of Rights and those protections. We believe that paper
is actually important.
So the words that are written on paper mean something, and we believe that our courts have to protect that. Now, in practice, that is definitely breaking down, and I think we need to acknowledge that. But this is happening globally, and it's happening here, and maybe our faith in those institutions is going to be our downfall unless we can educate ourselves and figure out how to defend against it. Okay, but so how are they doing that? They're doing, we're seeing this insertion of the new international economy through public-private partnerships that are focused on economic development. Now, Americans love business. We love it. We love the independence that it brings. We love the idea of providing for our families. We have always valued honest work.
As part of the national psyche, if you look at Alexis de Tocqueville, he talks about this.
So we have a tradition of supporting business and independent activity and free enterprise and self-sufficiency, and somewhere along the line, that celebration of that entrepreneurial virtue has turned into economic development.
Okay, it's been rolled into that phrase, I should say.
Economic development is,
it sounds good to us because we like the activity of business.
And we like the idea of being able to work hard and then have a good life and retire and live comfortably and play with your grandkids. okay? So that term, economic development, appeals to us, but we have to think of that term differently because it comes straight out of that UN resolution, and it comes straight out of the World Bank's programs, and you need to think of it as, instead of like an organic process of, of free people finding out where their skills can contribute to society and also make a return for them privately. That is not the kind of economic development that is encompassed in this idea. That's what we think of when we hear the phrase, I think. I mean, I'm an optimist, and I think most of us are good-hearted people, and so we hear that phrase and we think what I've just described. But we have to interpret that phrase through the lens of the new international economic order and the globalists. And they have in mind a developed economy. Like a housing development is developed. It's planned out, it's laid out for you. You have to, abide by certain building codes and covenants, and, some of us live in those, and it's wonderful to live in. Your neighbors aren't gonna raise chickens or something that wake up your kids at night. But this is actually limiting the possibilities for genuine economic activity, and it's going to do that in a command and control way by promulgating regulations, not laws, regulations. This is a regulatory framework that limit what you can do and that require you to monitor and track how your economic activities impact the planet. So, in the background of my first slide, it said sustainability reporting. We're going to save the planet through ESG, metrics. We're going to see regulations that require anyone engaged in economic activity, and they define economic activity so broadly that if you're breathing, you're engaged in it, okay? They're going to regulate that by requiring you to measure how much carbon you're using, your impact on the planet. That's what ESG reporting is about. That stands for environmental, social, and governance metrics. Okay, and we all know that the United Nations program led to Agenda 21, which is about saving the planet. Okay, so they're thinking you're going to develop the economy, you're going to measure and manage it. You're going to regulate it by requiring monitoring and reporting. And then your choices for what's going to be available to you even to engage in are going to be limited. And you can see that if you look at what our state is doing, and this is every state in the union, and it was mandated it was written into legislation, I believe in 2014, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This requires that every state lay out targeted sectors of the economy to
promote, and then you have to report those to the Fed.
So, and it goes down to even the municipal level. In Tulsa, where I'm from,
our target industries sound straight out of the Cold War, to be honest.
It is cybersecurity,
financial technology,
fintech, that's, crypto, energy, oil and gas. But our oil and gas producers, the major ones, or the investors, are transferring into tech. So those cyber and oil and gas and energy tech all sort of bleed together. Healthcare, and then some ag.
Okay, but those industries
are going to be the ones that you're allowed to engage in. So this developed economy picks different target industries for your region, and only those industries will be supported by grants, by regulations that are favorable to them and exclude others. And then it filters down into the kind of educational opportunities that are offered to our children. So, like I said, I'm really into I'm really an educator. And if you look at the P20 pipeline, I don't know if you've heard that, that is preschool to PhD. It's a pipeline to where? To the workforce. And so you hear lots of talk about reforming the, education so that it prepares people for the workforce, which I don't like that anyway. Because I think education should prepare you to be a thoughtful human being who can think for yourself and criticize things and make good choices. But the P20 pipeline is preparing students for the workforce, and it's the workforce that is dominated by the areas of the economy that have been pre-selected or developed. So workforce development, economic development go hand in hand, and it's all regulated. Let's see. Oh, I gotta speed it up. Okay, so basically what we're doing through the tool of the public-private partnership, which if you just go Google it, you're gonna find so many of these. It's just really mind-boggling how many public-private partnerships are being rolled out, especially as a result of COVID, because of the economic turmoil that has been caused. I think it's a controlled demolition. But because, governments, whether it's the national level, whether it's the state level, the county, or the municipality, they've all been hurt economically by the lockdowns, right? And we have yet to see the full effect of that. But I believe that that was on purpose. Of course, I don't think it was for your safety. I think it was to re-engineer supply chains. And it was to actually deprive the government of the revenue that it needs to fulfill its entitlement obligations. In that situation, because the government still does have entitlement obligations, like Medicare, Medicaid, education, it has to provide those programs, but it doesn't have the money to do so. This is a perfect opportunity to set up a public-private partnership where grant makers, especially philanthropic foundations, can offer to fill in the gaps, the funding gaps. And they do it by a public-private partnership. You see it in education. If you look at, everyone's complaining about the state budget for education. Well, I think it's been, wrecked on purpose so that you can set up charter schools, you can revamp the entire thing, and you can set up, which I won't get into, but pay for success contracts.
So that entire process is basically transferring
government. And what we have American constitutional government to a model of business plan governance. And I have, there is also a transition from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Shareholder capitalism, just in its most basic form, is that it's a theory that says that the purpose of a corporation is to maximize profits for the shareholders, okay? That, I think, is a model that is more consistent with the ideas that animate our Constitution and our tradition of liberty. But in the corporate world, we're moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And that is the transition to inclusive capitalism. See, they have tons of names for the same thing, which is basically a transition in which profits are no longer the main focus of corporate activity. The business itself is no longer the main focus of corporate activity. Rather, creating value for stakeholders becomes the purpose of a corporation. Okay, so what is inclusive capitalism? It's stakeholder capitalism applied to the public sphere. And this, I took a screenshot. A framework for inclusive capitalism is a new compact among businesses, government, and American workers.
Well, this ought to bring fear into the hearts of anyone who cares about genuine constitutional government.
Because why are they saying a new compact
the Constitution is based on the form of a contract.
Which is very different, okay? And the Constitution deals with citizens and residents, not workers. What this signals, and I can't go into, all the proofs of this, but when you see the framework for inclusive capitalism, which our White House has signed on to, if you look at Oklahoma City's, city council page, if you look at the state of Oklahoma's,
our state website, which looks just like a corporate website.
You can't tell that it's a government. If you look at any of these new marketing campaigns, they're all talking about inclusiveness, diversity, resilience, sustainability, innovation, economic development. I could just go on and on. You start to notice these patterns. But they are not talking about citizens. They're not talking about Americans, just in the general. Many of them talk about workers. And again, that just rubs me the wrong way, because I might work, but I'm not a worker. I'm a human being created by God, And my government, it just has to recognize me as a person with rights. It doesn't have to recognize that I'm created by God or anything else, but it has to recognize me as a person with rights, not as a worker. But that's what we're going to. Okay, and that's where you get equality of opportunity, equal outcomes. That's your social engineering, and on and on. I need to speed through. Okay, so we won't go through all of this, but we have, in our everyday talk, in the business world, in the political world, in the world of education, we have unknowingly, I think it's unknowingly, adopted this language of the reset. It's the Great Reset. And we have adopted the language of economics for everything, okay? Education is valuable. Why? Because it's going to make money. Religion is valuable. Why? Oh, because it's going to create, good values so you can make more money. This kind of foreign policy is good. Why? Because it's going to help our bottom line. And the language, and I think this goes to this tradition that we have that's sort of being used against us, of celebrating free enterprise and hard work and things like that. It has really taken over our understanding about many different phenomena that comprise the human experience. And we're more than just material beings, and so we should think of things in richer terms than simply materialism. But when we're talking about reducing things to economics, then that's really where you're going. You're adopting a sort of materialistic worldview that is convenient because it does generate consensus. Everyone wants to make enough money to feed their family. Everyone, left, right, doesn't matter. Everyone understands that the more money you make, the more money you spend, and the better off someone else is going to be, right? And it's also easy to quantify, and you don't have to get into the messy business of discussing religion and politics. You can just talk about the bottom line. Sorry. Okay, but that economic understanding of really reality as a whole, it has permeated our politics, and that is going to be, if we can't change it around, I think that's going to really be the end of the freedom that we have heretofore enjoyed. Okay, so how do public-private partnerships advance the new international economic order, which, you can look at the World Bank. I've pulled up their documents. They say exactly what they're going to do. This is not hidden. I don't use the dark web. I use Google. It's all there. My question here, how is it possible to reinvent the constitutional system without an election, a convention, or a revolution? Well, you do it very quietly through this private sector transformation. And, and they like to use this model of creating a problem. You have a prepared narrative, you control the response, and you introduce a solution, or problem, reaction, solution. This is the Hegelian dialectic. And my academic training is philosophy, and I loved Kierkegaard, who hated Hegel. So I think I was prepared to look at this stuff, because this is really a Hegelian or dialectical system of introduce a problem, have the fix ready, roll it out, and then, in good American style, make a lot of money off of it. That's your circular economy. It's not just sharing and reusing, it's actually creating problems that are going to drive further need that is going to make a lot of money for corporations. Now I'm not trying to just bash on corporations, because they can do some good things, you know? But especially with if you consider where the fourth industrial revolution is going, that's this program of melding technology into every aspect of our life. The corporations have really been consolidating, and supply chains have been consolidating, and that was, if you look, here's another phrase, accelerated by the pandemic. Okay, anytime you see someone say, oh, these forces, they were accelerated by the pandemic, you know it's a buzzword. You know that this is part of that narrative that they're trying to give to you. And I'm sorry. So when, like I said, I'm not trying to just bash on corporations, but because of this shift toward digital technology, toward remote work, toward solutions that are going to be demanded in real time and provided in real time, and telemedicine and, you know, electric vehicles and all of this technology, we're seeing massive consolidations under the title of a single corporation. Okay, so when I say that, you know, the corporations are behind this, this isn't just like, you know, a small local corporation. This is more like these large behemoths and holding companies and asset managers that are buying up all actors, all businesses in a certain sector, and they're controlling both sides of the competition, okay? And so basically, you know, we've seen,
I have, you know, data automation could eliminate 73 million
U.S. jobs by 2030. 1/3 of U.S. workers could be jobless. Before COVID, the fourth industrial revolution was threatening massive unemployment. Massive. And COVID just provides this wonderful cover for those trends that these large technology companies, the federal government, institutions of higher education, and others have been promoting. They want to put you out of work and replace you with a robot. It's just a fact. But they need a good excuse to bring in the robots, and that is public health and safety. Okay? And so they're going to use lots of computers and consolidations, and then the narrative that they're using is that business is now the only institution that is seen as both competent and ethical, right? So we're being primed to distrust our government even more, which we should distrust the government. You know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But if we are responsible for our government, then it can be a very effective tool for solving, you know, our conflicts and things like that. Okay, this is just more examples of propaganda and priming that say COVID and the economic lockdowns have starved your government for revenue, therefore you need to enter into a public-private partnership. It's all over. I mean, you just Google it and you'll find it. Okay, the new social contract, it's a merger of government and business, and you know, a better economy is possible, but we need to reimagine capitalism to do it. They're going to do that by encouraging corporate purpose metrics and ESG metrics. Okay, I need to take questions. Let me just see if I can get sort of to the end here. Who supports the transition to inclusive capitalism? Everyone. Everyone. Everyone.
Our government, SIT does.
Republicans do, Democrats do, faith-based organizations do. Many of them think that it's good because these buzzwords have been crafted precisely so that you'll think it's good. Okay, here we go. I wanted to just show you this logo because you can see that it's the UN color wheel. You know, I'm good at recognizing patterns. So, lest you think that we are safe in a red state, just know, you can see that Oklahoma imagined that. We're talking about reimagining things. So, just in conclusion, because I'll take your questions for a long time, we are being asked to imagine ourselves out of the representative process. We're being asked to imagine ourselves outside of the rule of law and into a corporate governance framework that we have no control over. Now, I think as the audience here shows, and in Tulsa and other places, there is a strong aversion to that reimagining. So we just have to understand it, and then we can start the process of destroying that ugly imagination. Thank you. Is there a better or worse way to take questions?
Just do about 5 minutes worth.
Okay.
And I is going to take the microphone to
Okay, so we just have about 5 minutes worth of questions. Let me see, okay, so she'll make, okay.
Hello, thank you for being here. My credit union has forced me to accept a new card that lets me stop its use, and that's scary to me.
That it can stop your use?
Yes, that I can stop the use of the credit card. If I can do that, can they do that? Like, if I need to go fill my car up with gas and I have to use a card?
Yes.
Is that a two-sided?
The short answer,
and I can't hear your answer, I'm sorry.
The short answer to that question is yes. The entire transition to the digital currencies and using a card as part of it is for tracking and tracing, and then it's going to be for regulating. So we're moving to the ESG model is like social credit scoring for corporations. We're going to have social credit scoring for individuals. And if your social credit score is low enough, or if you've used too much carbon, or you've participated in a big barbecue where they use a lot of beef, it could be the fact that you lose access to your digital currency, and that is a very real situation that's just around the horizon.
Okay, I agree with everything you said, great presentation, but just kind of semantically, when you talked about communitarianism and you said, it's kind of this hybrid of, communism or whatever. So as you know, the, Communist Manifesto was written 175 years ago. The bedrock principle is that communism at its heart is the abolition of private property. Isn't the abolition of private property really one of the main goals of the Great Reset today and all the other words that go with it?
Oh yes, absolutely. And we're going to be asked to give up our private property, or told to give it up for the common good, just like
you did with your freedom
and the masking and things like that. So the sharing economy is not just about using goods in a way that is ecologically sound. We all want clean rivers and land, right? But the sharing economy is about moving to an economic model in which you subscribe to everything. You have subscriptions. You don't actually own your silverware, your utensils. There's a woman from Sweden who talks about this with a straight face. You're going to rent them, just like you rent, a ride from Uber, just like you rent, a Netflix subscription. Everything is going to be designed to be rental only. And when you see affordable housing proposals, it's all designed to be stack and pack, renting only, and people are going to be moved into smart cities. And Oklahoma City, you're worse off than Tulsa in the smart city. I have your plan up here, you should look at it. Yes, it's absolutely about removing your property rights in the name of saving the planet.
You said that Governor Stitt and the Democrats and everybody's in on it. So
Yeah.
what do we do now? I mean, we vote for these people and we expect them to uphold, you know, what we believe in and.
Yeah, what do we do now? I mean, I think number one is you educate people, because there are a lot of people who use these terms. I mean, they are designed by well-paid marketing firms, global marketing firms. We're talking McKinsey, Deloitte, and military psychologists. So these are no joke people here. They have been hired to figure out the terminology that is going to be appealing and deceptive, but it carries enough truth in it that people are sucked in. So if we can identify those buzzwords and help people, especially the good people who have been sucked in sort of without their knowledge, then you can point out, here are these patterns, and is this really good? Is this good for business? Is this going to make more money, or is this program going to ask me to engage in what's really a woke ideology of people, planet, prosperity? Okay, so first off, there is much hope, I think, if we can educate people and give them the tools that they need to identify these programs. And really, if you look at some of my videos on impact investing, that's really important to understand. So educate them, and then when you start showing the people who are part of this agenda that you know their buzzwords, they're actually going to be caught off guard. And they will stop and think about whether or not these programs are sane. If you can sort of say, hey, you're using all the buzzwords. I've done this at community meetings, and then people will wonder, what's going on? Also, in numbers, there is great force. So when Joy talked about how we need to really unite politically, the more people know this, and like I said, I think state action is the best. I don't think you can fight it at the city level because things are too entrenched.
And the Fed is sort of a lost cause right now. But we can all look at those in this room.
People in Tulsa, people in Guthrie, Guyman, Durant, wherever.
And we can all say, we're Oklahomans.
And we don't do that here. And then we get the Kansans, because they don't want to do it either. I would guess, this is totally a guess, I would say 80% of Americans who,
if they understood this program, they would just,
try to bring a hatchet to it. So we just have to help them know. And I have some Take Back Oklahoma plans and things like that with more
concrete solutions. But number one is education.
I think we better.
Okay. Thank you.